Breaking Down Security, and I am Brian Brake. Welcome back, listener. This is Brian and Mr. Boettcher for Breaking Down Security.
What's up, Mr. Brake?
I don't know. Maybe me and my sexy voice are just sitting here, doing another podcast this week.
Really?
Yeah, no. One of our Twitter followers was kind enough to tell me that they were having lunch with some ladies who thought that I had quite the, Barry White-like voice, or, voice like Marvin Gaye, if
You're making it up.
No, I've got it. I'm going to frame that DM because it's probably the best DM I've ever had. That's better than any award you can get at RSA, I'll tell you that.
So these mints that are made in China that I got at a security con, they're okay to eat, right?
I don't know, man. If you start telling me you're going to run for president or something, I might tell you to put them down or talk to Mrs. Boettcher and have her, take them away from you.
Yeah.
So before we get started on our topic or topics this week, I just wanted to announce, and we're not keeping up with we are keeping up with the Joneses kind of, but I've had this Slack chat channel open up since like April. I just have been poorly trying to manage it, by having people, trying to find a bot to automate the verification process. So, I found one. So if you want to join us on Slack and, participate in the conversation or, interview people or ask questions of our interviews or topics in the future, please hit us up. The link is in the show notes, but you can also go to breaksec.slack.team and you can sign up there on our Slack channel. So far, we have a maximum. We've got like ones of peoples out there. I think we have like 4 people so far, including myself. Mr. Boettcher has seen fit to not show up yet, but he'll get there soon. Do you have it? Are you on it? Are you visiting it?
I'm trying.
Okay. Well, when you do, a Slack bot will come in and go, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself, and then you'll get an email with verification. You hit that verification, and then a little something comes up in the chat window in Slack, and I have to verify you. So all I have to do is check a box, and you're in. So.
Well, I've just got vehicles with too much brake slack can be very hard to stop. So I'm on the wrong place. Sorry about that.
What are you talking about? You're on crack, man. It's brake sec. Yeah, brake. I hope it's slack.team. I thought it was. Yeah, crazy nap. Brakesec.slack.team. Yeah. All right. Well, tell me a little bit about some. Go ahead.
I hope these don't have any cadmium in them.
Why? Cadmium gives you superpowers, I thought.
Oh.
While I'm trying to find out the exact link, maybe you could tell us a little bit about that malware you were telling me about earlier that you found, and how it works and what it does.
Oh yeah. So we had a bunch of we always get malware coming through email. People like to phish other people and stuff like that, but we started getting some that was JavaScript. And it was ransomware JavaScript.
Okay.
It's like, wow. Sometimes we'll get JavaScript files and it'll be a Trojan or something. I think this is the first time I've seen that. I may have just, it may have been blocked, right? Mm-hmm. But, we started getting JavaScript files and I thought, well, this is new, because when I tested it to see what it did, it just sat there like it was a Trojan. So then I analyzed it with LogMD, and I'm almost done, getting all the reports and stuff and looking through the process execution and things. And all of a sudden I get the pop-up, which is the typical, hey, you have ransomware, you need to, download Tor and pay us some Bitcoin and junk like that. Mm-hmm. So it was about 10 minutes in, and I'm going, and I've got SSDs on the lab box, so I'm
Yeah.
going, wow, this is taking forever. And finally, I realized it was ransomware, and then I tweeted it out. Hey, you may want to block um, the JavaScript extensions that Microsoft runs by default.
Like what? .js? Is there any others?
.js and .hta.
HTA. Okay.
HTA is a hypertext reader
Yeah.
or executor, right? So Microsoft will actually post an HTML page in a console window, something like that. So what the malware actually was an HTA file, and it just said that had the HTML headers and it had JavaScript all the way through, and then at the bottom it was the HTML footer. Right.
Oh, okay.
So it was a valid HTML page, but it didn't have any HTML. It was just all JavaScript, right?
Yeah, and this was
So
all in the email, right?
yeah.
So the other
You
thing you
download
could
the
do
email. It was in a zip file, so you'd unzip it
Oh, okay.
and double click it.
Yeah. Wow. So it does require some user intervention.
It does.
Okay.
And what they've done now is they've gone to and I said this will be the next step, because it'll bypass the gateway filters that a lot of people incorporate.
Mm-hmm.
It will encrypt zip the malware.
Yep.
Right. So, and then it'll put the password in the body of your email.
Yep.
So if you ever get the password in the body of your email, that's a red flag. And you can teach people, hey, if you ever see this, this is bad. Yeah. Don't ever send or open an email that has an encrypted attachment with the password in the email, right? Yeah. So it's just all kind of wrong.
Yeah, a lot of I was doing testing with my colleague at my workplace, and that was one thing we noticed too. It was like if you encrypt or password protect the file, and doesn't necessarily be one or the other, it'll automatically just fail through. It'll fail open and pass it through without additional scrutiny. So we were like, oh yeah, that's kind of a thing, isn't it? You should probably that should probably be a flag instead of a because I mean, how often are people sending encrypted zip files or whatever that you can't scan? So
well, really, if it has company data, PI data, customer data, all that stuff, you should encrypt it.
Sure.
If you're sending it through email. So you can do several things. At your gateway, you could say, usually they say usually they have the functionality to say, hey, this thing is encrypted, be careful. Yeah. I can't determine whether it's good or bad or indifferent, right? Yeah. So you could change the subject and say, hey, potential malware, be careful, make sure you're expecting it in the subject.
Yeah,
at the gateway.
The other thing you could do is, instead of sending, password protected files that you then have to send a password for in another email later, is to have some kind of secure file drop where you can either retrieve it from your client or vendor, or you can have them upload directly to your secure file site, and then you get around having to worry about tar pitting your emails or finding out which ones are trustworthy or whatever. So.
And it can come down to policy too. Hey, we don't accept anything but PGP. And so if the company uses PGP, you've got your you can encrypt a file for a particular person. Just use their public key, right? And then they can decrypt it themselves. That way, only they can decrypt it. And if it's any other type of encryption other than PGP, company policy, don't open it. There's an idea. That
is an idea. I think if you are a services related organization and you PGP encrypt your files and send the files to somebody who doesn't understand PGP, it could be a teachable moment, yes, but a company may not want to do business with you if you have to explain to them how to do security. That's why I was thinking of more along the lines of a secure drop or something like that. I do know that some companies do stop or do not allow you to access, Google Drive or Box or Dropbox out there, because they can be a malware infector. But I think in that case, the risk of using a drop is a lot less than somebody sending you an encrypted zip file. I think the risk is less by using a secure drop over encrypted zip or encrypted PDFs or something like that.
Yeah.
So let's see. So before we get started, I want to do a teachable moment. I told Mr. Boettcher about this. This happened on what was it, Wednesday? Yeah, and I was feeling pretty crappy because it was just one of those weeks. So I was sitting there in the hospital with, I took my wife to a procedure at a hospital, and nothing major, just, regular stuff. And I'm on my work laptop, working, and all of a sudden Bill Semp, who we've had on the podcast before, you can go back and check him out. He texted me on Twitter and said, "Hey, did you send me this link?" And I was like, "What link?" Which I should have threw up a big red flag. And he said, "Well, here, look at it." So he sent me a screenshot, and it was in Skype, the exact same Skype channel I'm using right now, or chat that I'm using right now. Apparently, some person, lady or gentleman from Brazil, had gotten into my live.com account, and in the course of doing so, got into my Skype account as well, and had started spamming everybody with links to. What did you tell me that it was? You said it was some kind of brain pills or something, like memory pills?
Yeah, I tested it.
Okay, but was there any malware on it?
No, I think it was either trying to use Flash, which I don't have Flash.
Yeah.
Or it was just an ad.
Okay.
Right, it's trying to spam your contacts with ads.
Yeah.
So I guess saw the link, tested it with LogMD just to see what it did.
Mm-hmm.
Right, it may have an IE exploit. I didn't test it with IE in particular, but yeah. In Chrome and Firefox, one of them looked for Flash. Could have been just because of the page it was loading, or it wanted to load. But no, it didn't drop any executables or anything.
Oh, that's good. Okay, because the thing is, it looked like it was coming. It was a LinkedIn link, and then it looked like that LinkedIn is running some kind of open redirector, which allows you to put anything in, and then it'll send you to LinkedIn, and then reload the page that it actually wants you to load, which I think is probably a security vulnerability, but yeah. And then it went to Baidu, which is a Chinese-based website, which I was like, well, at that point, I know that it's probably not a good thing. So I've apologized to pretty much everybody, I think, who has replied back to the original link. Thankfully, everybody has been merciful, but it was really a teaching moment, because I never use my live.com account. It just sits there gathering spam from Microsoft or whatever. And I didn't have two-factor auth on my Skype or my live.com account, which was an oversight on my part. And once I put those on there and I changed all my passwords, I suggested that everybody who got the Skype message change theirs too, just in case they clicked on it. But yeah, I mean, it's a teaching moment. It was an embarrassing moment for me, because I was feeling ignorant. Felt like the guy that you tell to put two-factor auth on all of his accounts. You're like, I don't have to do that. I totally whiffed on it. So definitely a teachable moment. So now I have to put a code in every time I want to run Skype now, or check that live.com account. Thankfully, they didn't realize, I guess, what they had, because I used the live.com to log into my Microsoft store as well. So I had to monitor my credit cards for the next couple days to make sure that they weren't trying to buy Surface 4 Pros or Surface Books on the Microsoft store and send them to Brazil. So it's important to lock those things down, because I didn't realize how much that the live.com account had been integrated into Skype and my Microsoft store. So
So, did you have a very complex password or was it a simple password?
Well, because I had been using my Skype for so long, it wasn't actually what I thought was integrated in, and the password could have been more complex. It was 8 characters, had an upper, lower number, and a special, but it was only 8 characters. So I don't know if it was a brute force or if somebody had just happened to hit upon, the right hash value or something. I don't know. I changed it to
All right.
something that was more 16 with a two-factor auth on there. Microsoft doesn't use Microsoft does use Google Authenticator, not SMS. I also
Well, I was just going to say, well, we can, keep this in the back of our minds in case there's a disclosure coming out. Because it seems like maybe your hash was taken or something. You
it
think?
could be. I mean, it wasn't like my password was 1 2 3 4 5 6. It was an 8 character. It did have an upper lower number and special. The only thing I didn't have on it was two-factor. So I mean, yeah, it could be the tip of something bigger. I don't know. I mean, I've had the Skype account since like 2004, but the live.com account only came about when they started integrating things. I just didn't realize that, I didn't have one. I didn't know they had two-factor auth for live.com yet because I don't use that account. And so, yeah, it's a teachable moment. I was suitably embarrassed, apologizing to people like, what's his name? Kevin Johnson.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a bunch of other people, who have all been on the show before, and they were like, well, what's this all about? Like Patrick Haim, from Dropbox. He's like, hey, what's this? And I was like, yes, I'm sorry, sir.
Whoopsie.
The issue's been rectified. I promise. I put two-factor auth and everything. So yeah.
Are you calling him fat? Trying to send him to a weight loss site?
I don't know if the links were different. I know you got memory pills. I don't know if everyone else got Viagra or what. So yeah, I have no idea. So yeah, many apologies to people who are following me or who were in Skype with me and got that message. I apologize. So. All right. Well, we're gonna talk shortly. One of the other topics we had was the BSIMM version 7 came out. We talked about this November of last year, so it's it's been yearly.
About that time.
Yeah, about that time. It's about that time of year. BSIMM version 7. Of course, we talked about it. The previous year. It's the building security maturity report that comes out. Gary McGraw. Sammy Migas, oh god, I'm gonna screw it up. And Jacob West, they interview people from various companies all over various industry verticals, finance, banking, tech, cloud-based companies, IoT, healthcare, that kind of thing, e-commerce like PayPal. Networking like Cisco, insurance companies like Aetna. So they find out about how well you're doing with software security initiatives, building out security in the software you create. Making sure that that you're doing a good job and you're following along certain guidelines that they've helped establish.
Yeah, so what they do is they perform an assessment if you have an application security program or if you build applications. I think to get into this, you need to pay them money to come and do that assessment. Obviously, it takes a lot of time on their part, and it's not free, obviously. And for them to spend all that time and assess your organization's AppSec program.
Yep.
So they'll come in and they'll score you on a bunch of things, and I guess the value for that is you get to see where you stand.
That's true.
Where they measure you specifically as a company, as a builder of applications, against. I guess it's a comparison against other firms, and this one had 95 firms participate.
Yep.
So they come in, assess your program, and then give you the results of yours and others.
Yep.
Right. All the others, and I guess by being a participant, you may get stuff that's not public,
Yeah.
right, as
Yeah.
well. And of course, you'll get your own assessment and maybe some ideas on where you need to improve as well.
Yeah. And this isn't it's not a yearly thing, but they have been doing them on a regular basis. So it's not like the Verizon data breach report or the Ponymon report or anything like that, where you're, expecting to hear how badly somebody's done or whatever.
Yeah.
They like to break down the report. They broke it down into 4 domains: governance, intelligence, SSDL touchpoints, which are practices associated with analysis and assurance of particular software development artifacts and processes. Security software methodologies include these practices. And then the deployment of your application, how you maintain it, and other environmental issues. So where you deploy it, how you deploy it, how you secure the environment, etc.
Yep.
So,
And it's I guess important to note that companies don't have to do this every year.
that's
I mean,
right.
you can have an assessment done 1 year and then take 2 or 3 years to get better. You can read the next year's report, obviously, see where the industry is, and then do another assessment when you think you're ready.
Yep. Yep. So we talked about version 6 last year, and they've added a few things to version 7 this year. I'm going to scroll down. If you have the report, and I'd like to thank Joe Nelson from notrealcompany.com for his registering on their site and getting me the report. It was very much helpful to the guy. They do require you register, but if you do like I did and put in fake information, you can still get the report. So they just don't get a business lead in this case. Let me see, page 65. So if you're reading the report, if you scroll down to page 65, it shows you some of the stuff that has changed between version 6 and 7. So they've added some controls. They decided to change the name instead of just trying to lump controls into existing ones or what have you. So
Yeah.
So they added 5 things. They said build and maintain top N possible attacks list. They changed it from a 1.1 AM 1.1 to AM 2.5. Am I reading that right?
Oh,
Yeah. So
I don't know. I've got some analysis on some of these, and
Okay.
well, for example, the use of application containers, right? So they added that.
Yeah.
The
That's
the
new.
organization uses application containers to support its software security goals. The primary driver for using containers includes ease of development, tighter coupling of applications with dependencies, isolation without the overhead of like full-on virtual machines, a convenient place for security controls to be applied. Okay, so the total number of companies of the 95 that implemented use of application containers was 0. Okay, so the reason you'd want to look at if you have if you build an application as a company, you're trying to secure your applications, right? It would be highly valuable to read this report and kind of measure where you are against that, and also against the industry,
Yeah.
right, as a whole. And this is not just against the industry on average. These are against companies who want to do better, right? That's why they pay these BSIMM guys to come over and do an assessment, because they want to improve. They care about security. They're serious about getting their applications more secure. Okay, so these are better than average company. I'll to say it lightly. So if you read this report, you can kind of judge where you are as well, and it shows you. It kind of gives examples of how you should approach this. Read this. Maybe do a self-assessment, right, as best you can, and score yourself against these and see where you are. If you believe that X is a very, very important security control to administer in your application, you may be right, you may be wrong, but you can compare it to others in the industry of how important they think it is to spend their capital on a certain control. They may think that it's not that important. They score very low on it.
Yeah.
You may think it's the most important. Maybe you should reassess that and figure out why they're not thinking it's that important. And the use of application containers is probably one of them. You may get a vendor that says, oh, this is the most important thing you could ever do to your, to your business. We got this product that does the application containers, blah, blah, blah. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And you're going, well, nobody does this. Why should I spend $1 million on your product? So it
Yeah.
gives you some knowledge, right? That you can apply to your organization.
Yeah, and this is a not a compliance framework. It's more like a best practices, or to help
Yeah.
rate you against other people in your vertical. You talked. You said, why would you spend $1 million for additional controls? If nobody else is using application containers, why should I spend extra money for your product? The industry is going to head in that direction, where they're going to be isolating the application from the rest of the operating system, because adding these additional layers is going to be very important. You could almost call it a selling advantage, where you could say we've identified threats to our environment or our application, where this container, if you use it, will make you more secure than, say, if you went with company B, who doesn't use this stuff, who could fall prey to the same attack and then gain a foothold into your environment. By using application containers, that won't happen. So you can use some of these things as sales points for your product or for your organization.
Right. That would be a bad example, since nobody uses application containers in the BSIMM. But
Yeah.
if you found something that most of them do use, then yes, that may lend some credence to that particular control. So I think it's worth reading.
Yep.
Definitely, if you do work for a company that has developers that does develop software.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the most important use of the BSIMM is to measure where you stand in comparison to others, and those others being allegedly or supposedly above average, because they go to the trouble, the expenditure to do this assessment on themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's good to see the maturity levels, where you can say, okay, well, they have some really nice spider graphs in here talking about how mature organizations are with regards to governance. Level 1 governance is identifying artifacts for the strategy on how you're going to do things. Educating executives. A lot of the percentages from BSIMM 6 appears to be higher than BSIMM 7, but I'm not sure why that is. It could be
A lot of the what seems to be higher?
well. You said the percentages on the BSIMM 6 for some of these touch points appear to be higher last year than they were this year.
Okay, that's probably because they've added a few new companies to the BSIMM that are either startups or haven't had an AppSec program before.
Yeah.
For example,
Okay.
Internet of Things companies,
True.
right? So they're, you can't say that things have to improve over time, even though they do have metrics in the report, and we'll get to that in a sec. But yeah, this is an average of the companies that did participate in the BSIMM, and some of them may be immature at this point, just barely starting. Some may not even have a software security group, which they do point out that if a company does have a software security group, they're much better off. A no-brainer there.
Yep.
But yeah, they mentioned that the older the software security group is, the more mature they are as far as software security, right?
Yeah.
The better off they are and the higher they score on this test.
Well, that kind of makes sense. I mean, the other thing they mentioned was that the average of the 95 participating firms for that had practiced software security is only about 4 years, which is kind of, I don't know, that's not good.
It seems low.
It does seem low, but I guess it would depend on the companies that they talk to. I mean, there must be a lot of fairly new companies in this organization. I mean,
so what was it? What was the average of 4 years? What was that again?
That was how long that they've been doing software security initiatives and software security. Well, I mean, a lot of these companies are fairly well established. You've got Adobe, you've got Aetna's, you've got Cisco, Box, Dell, EMC. F-Secure, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, General
So
Electric.
yeah, I don't know how old Box is, but maybe they were a thing and then they established their software security group later on.
Yeah.
After they were in business, and then they realized, wow, we really need security, and that happens in a lot of places, right?
Yeah.
So they, they build this product, they get customers, then they go through an audit, and the auditor says, you don't have a security team, and the company's like, do we need one?
I didn't know we were supposed to have one.
Yeah, so then they build a security team, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff happens. I mean, it happens more often than you think. And so there may be well-established companies that might get into a certain customer or line of business that demands that or requires that they have a security assessment, and all of a sudden they have to build a security team, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other thing is the list that is at the beginning is not a complete list. So I'm sure that there's some companies that didn't want to put their name on the report that are, maybe they don't have a software security group at all. Or, maybe they just started it the month before they were supposed to be in the BSIMM. So, that 3.94 years should not be indicative of everybody who's actually putting their name in the list here. So
right, and it says they do have Internet of Things companies, which I would have to assume they're relatively new by comparison.
True.
The oldest one is 19 years having a security group. So yeah, the average the I don't know what the median is. I don't know if they publish that, but yeah. So it's definitely something worth looking at. You have any other points you want to bring up?
Well, they said that the software security group sizes on average was 11.7 people. They said the smallest was one person, largest was 130. The median, like you had mentioned, is 5 people. So 5 people in a software security group. So I'm assuming you've got a leader and, maybe 3 or 4 minions who are looking at your security team is basically 5 people in a company on average. So let me see, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's not to throw out anything, but in our software security group we have 6 people. So that's pretty average. Yeah.
I'm not sure if the CISO counts in that. Do they software security group?
No, because he'd be over the entire organization's security. They're talking software security specifically. So those are the groups. Those are the people who are going to be working with the developers. Are going to be looking at code base. So you've got doing pen testing and such like that. So yeah, I could see about 4 or 5 people. Depending on your size of your company. So that's not bad.
Yeah,
it's not bad.
How important your product is, how many customers you have. Yeah, it's all relative at that point.
And it depends on probably. There's probably a ratio you could probably do per developers or architects. 130 people in a software security group. That's a lot of people looking at the security of an organization, at least the software security in an organization. So, yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. So we can go down and look at some of the, some of the stuff that made news. So under security and strategy, we're not going to go through the whole report, but we'll talk about level 1 and some of the level 2 stuff that kind of stuck out. Level 1 on strategy and metrics. One of the ones I was surprised with was educating executives, which is only less than half. Which, if you're trying to get money and trying to secure your environment, I would think you'd need to have buy-in from said executives on, how secure your product needs to be.
But what are you educating them on specifically? Did they say? I mean, I don't understand what they're trying to educate executives about.
That is a good point. Let me see if I can hunt that up. Was there anything you found that surprised you?
No, nothing really surprised me in the report, because obviously, like I read last year's, and then there were some differences, but they kind of explained.
Yeah.
Right.
So executives are periodically shown the consequences of inadequate software security and negative business impact poor security can have. By understanding both the problem and its resolution, executives come to support the software security initiative. So, so that's what it is. It's 48% of the executives surveyed, or the executives, asked about in this thing, were not being educated, or maybe they were being undereducated. It seems like if you're trying to get help, bringing in outside guru is often helpful when seeking to bolster executive attention. So, they talk about bringing in consultants again to help, get the point across.
I mean, that makes sense. With education comes adoption, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. SSG often demonstrates worst case scenario in controlled environments with permission of all involved. So, in its most dangerous form, such education arrives courtesy of malicious hackers. So yeah, they're trying to say that when you're educating executives, you kind of want it to be on your own terms. You don't want it to be right after an incident response, because then executives are more willing to probably give you what you want, but they're going to be more risk adverse in the future to be able to take chances with software, with new systems. They're going to want established systems. They're going to be able to poke new technologies, or point fingers in the direction that isn't them, that kind of thing, which I've seen firsthand at previous jobs where things go south, and the first thing they do is they go, okay, let's fix the problem. Okay, now whose fault was it? Which is always one thing they want to do. So,
right, and that education, you always want to meet that head on and say, here's what could happen. Here's the things we'd like to have implemented because of these reasons. And, even if we have these, here's what could happen. And if the bad thing happens, if the B word, does rear its ugly head, then the CISO is prepared for that, or the executives up to the CEO are prepared for what happened, and they know probably why it happened, and then, they have better understanding.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're talking about understanding. So 48% of executives get educated on software security, but if you go down to level 2 on that, it says identifying metrics and using them to drive budgets. 20% of companies do that. So we're not properly educating ourselves on what we need to speak to the executives, it sounds like.
Yes. Metrics are important in that respect, right?
Yeah.
To measure where you are, and also to tell others where you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
relative to where you've been.
Yeah, if you guys don't know what's going on in your own house, how are you going to tell your boss what exactly you need for the next year in your budget?
Mm-hmm.
So
it says 9 out of 10 firms with the highest BSIMM scores have a satellite. Now, a satellite is somebody that works for another group, like a developer, and they have they take a security initiative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they've been educated in security and help the security group in its endeavors and kind of infiltrate that other organization, right? So 9 out of 10. I think that just speaks to the overall maturity of the organization. You get to that level, that's just like one of the higher steps, right?
Yep. Yeah. During Source Seattle, we talked with Miss Masha, who works over at Salesforce, and she was, her security program got mature enough, and, this is not software security, but it's, security period. She was getting information and data points from people. She was creating satellites of her own by, gamifying how things work. And I think that would work with, software security as well. You could, give parties if, significant bugs were found, or, you could do things that could make the environment a lot less militaristic and a little more fun, because I think fun would be preferable and more fun to gamify than it would be to point fingers and blame. So
yep.
Yeah.
Some examples of satellites: builders, that includes developers, architects, managers, engineers, testers, operations, administrators, executives, and middle management, and vendors also.
Yeah, people with an interest in doing the right thing, not necessarily being secure, but somebody who goes, "Hey, that doesn't look right. I should probably tell someone."
Yeah.
So let's scoot on down here. Compliance and policy. This was a new one. This was identifying PII data inventory. Only 25% of companies could identify or do identify PII in their data inventories, which that's not good, because that means that there's 75% of companies out there don't know if they have PII, or they're not doing it properly and they know they have it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that screams to me like, potential breach material right there, if they don't even know where all their PII is.
Right. I guess it's hard for application security team to recognize where, the builders are hiding all the PII within the application.
Yeah. Yep. So training goes as well as it can. Level 1, I was going to say fairly decent across the board. I mean, they provide awareness training, which is, I've got so many opinions about that just recently. They enhance satellites through training and events, which is good. But even training, once you get up to level 2, drops off to less than 20% of people doing those things. Training is still a checkbox thing. And I think until we see better numbers in level 2 and level 3 zone, I think we're going to continue having software security issues. I think this was the one that ran fairly low last year as well. So yeah, I mean, the numbers are fairly the same as they were last year, within 3%. So I don't see big changes there. We should probably have Miss Masha on and talk about training and how she does that.
Include security resources in your onboarding process, right?
Yeah.
15%.
Yeah.
It's not looking good in those areas, but hey, and keep in mind, these are the best, or better than average. You would have to assume companies that do this, and only 15% there.
Yeah.
Require an annual refresher. That seems kind of low, 7%. Require an annual refresher for training.
Most companies have compliance requirements that require you to have annual security training. So annual refreshers should be higher than that, but I'm surprised only 7% require annual refresher. I've actually, talked to people who said that their not doing their annual security training actually affects their bonuses or their boss's bonuses. So I don't know if that's the proper way of doing it, but
Okay, to be fair, it's a annual software security refresher course. So it keeps the staff up to date on security and ensures the organization doesn't lose focus due to turnover.
Okay, well, I mean, that's the customized training, the individual training or whatever's in level 1's only showing 39%. So 7% of the 39% who got to level 1, I'm not surprised by that. So okay. So let's see. Intelligence, attack models. 36% identify potential attackers. But 66% have a data classification scheme and inventory. So that's not bad. That's pretty good.
Yeah, overall, this one scores pretty low, attack models.
Yeah.
Once you get past the first 3, which is over 50%, it gets down to single digits.
Yeah.
Collect and publish attack stories, 9%.
Well, I mean, so what does that mean, attack stories? Is that like...
I think it's important to keep up to date on the latest attacks, right? So if you publish a story on, this particular attack happened to blah, blah, blah company working in this industry, here's how they did it, that kind of keeps your application security program up to date on the latest attacks, what's happening out there in the wild, and making sure that, hey, did we check for that particular attack as well? And if you scroll down, this is kind of what I wanted to talk about in the pen testing realm as well, where, an annual pen test, that's a periodic pen test is 17%.
Yeah.
That score is really low.
Yeah.
And a periodic pen test is not like your annual pen test for compliance, but it's like if you do a new release or every year we're going to test this app.
Yeah.
It's that. And only 17% of these companies annually test their applications with some kind of pen test. So, yeah, as far as the, the attack model, collecting stories and things, that's pretty important. It's a level 2. They're divided into level 1, which is the easiest. Level 2 is moderate, and level 3 is more advanced.
Yeah.
9% for
that's just information sharing. They need to be able to share that information with the rest of the company, for good or ill in this case.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. So standards and requirements. I'm going to skip down here a few pages. Sorry, we're on page 15 if you're following along in the story here. So creating a security portal, excellent. They got about 3/5 or 7/10, 70% here. Creating security standards. I would have expected security standards to be a little higher for application security standards.
63%, yeah.
Yeah.
That does seem a little low. I mean, I think that security standards for application developers or anybody having to deal with the application probably should be like the top. That should be something you should start with, right?
Yeah.
Let's have a standard here.
Yeah, and that dropped from last year, version 6. That dropped 10 points. So even if they are refreshing things, I mean there's some companies that they've added and some that they've culled that really bumped that average down. I mean, I would expect a 2 to 3 point difference. That's a 10-point difference. So that's fairly naughty. So level 2, creating standards review board. Okay, that one's all right. Creating SLA boilerplate. I've never been a fan of SLA boilerplate. I don't understand why they do that. It should be, every company you apply for a job, you are told to customize the resume for that organization. You should be doing the same thing for, each company that you're doing, business with that will require you to have an SLA. I mean, it just seems to me that would be something you'd want to do.
Be like a requirement, right?
Yeah,
Almost.
Yeah.
But only about a quarter do it.
Yep. So I don't know whoever they kicked out of from version 6 to version 7, but secure coding standards dropped almost 10 points as well. So maybe the companies that they removed were doing better regarding secure coding standards. They're down 18%. Last year was 29%. So that's
I mean, it seemed like you would at least implement some sort of a secure coding policy, right, for dev.
Yeah.
And be able to refer to it, right?
Yeah. Well, it makes me wonder what the 63% in creating security standards. What kind of security standards are we talking about in there, versus 18%? Because I would say security standards would be talking about how you should do your secure coding standards. But I mean, those could be policies versus actual whether or not to use KNR or which modules to use or how to use a specific module.
Well, according to this, secure coding standards, this is secure coding, help developers avoid the most obvious bugs and provide ground rules for code review. Right. So basically those two things. Hey, let's talk about the most obvious bugs. Let's get some awareness there, right, about what could happen, and establish a code review process, right?
Yeah.
So that's that.
Yeah.
And then create security standards. Software security requires more than security features, but security features are part of the job as well. The software security group meets the organization's demand for security guidance by creating standards that explain the accepted way to adhere to policy and carry out specific security-centric operations.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Like, for example, it may describe how to perform authentication on an Android device. Those sort of standards.
Oh, okay. All right. That sounds good. Yeah.
We will do, as a company, our policy is to provide this sort of hash,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Oh,
You got to
right.
do SHA
Right.
256, right?
Yep.
Because it's what do you call it? Safe for um,
Quantum encryption. Or
quantum. It's quantum safe for
yeah.
now, right?
Yeah.
SHA 256 and SHA 3 are quantum safe.
Yep. So I guess I'm going to skip down to page 16 where they were talking about code reviews. I guess because security standards were so low, code reviews being mandatory for projects at about 30% is not surprising, because if you need to have standards of because your standards were how does how does our application work in this manner, and how what should happen. The code reviews would also go, okay, it doesn't do this, how do we do that? And then you would have to run through the code review and find out. But it seems like not all projects are getting code reviews, and on top of that, they're doing ad hoc reviews. So that means that if you're using a CMMI level model type thing, you're probably like a level 2 instead of level 3. 61% do ad hoc reviews, which is great, but they're not doing code reviews for everything. And maybe that's just because with the 5 people in your security group, you can't check everything. I assume code review means check every line of code. So yeah.
Yeah, by a more senior developer,
Mm-hmm.
right? So,
Yeah.
or at least a spot check. But ad hoc would be more like, hey, I'll do it when I can, right? Not every time somebody submits code, somebody reviews it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, even if person isn't reviewing it, level 2 says 16% using automated tools. They should at least run it through some kind of automated tool to find uninitiated variables, or possible buffer overflows or something like that. Are they worried about the false positives causing additional time to the development cycle?
probably. There's a cost associated, obviously, with automated tools. It's kind of surprising that only 66%. Did that drop year over year because of the new companies they've added?
Let me see.
Yeah, so only 2/3 use automated tools, and only 16% use automated tools with tailored rules, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they change the rules based on, um, what kind of application it is, what specifically they need to adhere to, right?
Yeah. So the numbers didn't change. The code review mandatory didn't change much. It's like 2% difference.
Okay.
Centralized reporting dropped 1%, or actually went up 1%. So yeah, I'm not seeing a huge difference there in that. So
And we talked about coding standards, right?
yeah.
So companies may have coding standards, but only 5% enforce those coding
Ah,
standards.
right, right.
Yeah.
Well, you either get a guy who can code securely in Python, or you get 5 guys who can code in Python. And for your bottom line and for your sales to get something out Q4, you're going to want 4 guys who can do Python instead of 1 guy who can
Yeah.
code secure Python.
And you have to keep in mind, if you do really, really well on all of these, as an organization, you might not be making any money because you're spending it all on security, and you can't, so there has to be that balance between, how good do we make this? We still turn a profit, and we're able to put out a good product. So
Yeah.
this is what BSIMM is all about. That's why you see the spider graph.
Mm-hmm.
The spider graph doesn't, go along the outer circumference of the web, right? It's somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
Right? There has to be that balance between, hey, what do we spend our money on? Because there's only so much to go around.
Yep.
And so this is what the best, or seemingly the best, AppSec programs are spending their money on.
Yep. So I'm gonna scoot on down to deployment, unless you've got something you'd like to talk about with one of the other ones.
No, go ahead.
So I find it great that 86% of security groups or companies are using external pen testers to find problems. That's a great thing. I think that it's telling, though, at level 2, when you get to, they provide those same penetration testers with all available information, it drops by roughly, 4 times. So they go from 86% of people, doing pen tests to find the problems, but only 22% of the companies that probably do external pen tests are actually supplying the pen testers with all available information.
I would, I don't see why that would be so hard to do. If the pen tester asks for something, provide it to them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but it is surprising that only 22% provide pen testers with all the information they need.
You assume that they have that information to give to the pen tester, though. I mean, pen testers going to want to see data flow documents. They're going to want to see, process documentation sometimes. I mean, it may be even an engagement where they're not doing a white box test. It could be a black box test. So there is no information to give. Of course,
Fair enough.
You're wasting a lot of time.
True.
You're wasting a lot of time on a black box test, but that may be something that needs to be done. And of course, of the 22% who are supplying their pen testers with available knowledge, only 11% of those companies have pen testers performing deep dive analysis, which, I think it depends on what they consider deep dive. It could be static code analysis. It could be...
Here you go. I found it. Penetration testers can do deeper analysis to find more interesting problems when they have source code, design documents, architecture analysis results, and code review results.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're not doing code review, maybe you can't provide that code review result to the pen tester. So
pen tester, says, "Hey, are you doing code review?" Yeah, let's see the reports. Oh, yeah, we don't have it.
Give penetration testers everything you have created through the software development lifecycle and ensure that they use it.
Yeah.
If your penetration tester doesn't ask for the code, you need a new pen tester.
Oh. Well, you know what? That's an interesting question we can ask Mr. Jared, because we need to have him on in the near future to talk about to continue our conversation about that. I would like to get his. I'd like to get his thoughts on the information that he gets versus the information he asks for. And what happens when he doesn't get that information? Are they wasting their money? Does he ever tell them, hey, you probably should go back and have this before I start the pen test? It would be interesting to find out Mr. Jared's point of view on that. So
yeah.
Software environment, use application input monitoring. So that'd be like I would assume like a WAF or something.
I'm not sure. Let me go find that. You move on.
Okay.
I'll go find the description for that.
So 28% publish installation guides. Okay, I can understand that. Some installation guides are not required. Nobody uses application containers, which we've already talked about. 3% use application behavior monitoring and diagnostics. Okay. All right.
Okay, so application input monitoring is... it runs a monitor on the input so it'll be able to spot attacks. So this is basically documenting what gets input into the web, the application. So for web code, a web application firewall can do the job. So you were right. If it's a web application, the software security group could be responsible for the care and feeding of the system. Incident response is not part of this activity.
Yeah.
So defanged WAFs that write log files can be useful in, somebody's reviews, right?
Cool.
So a WAF that's unmonitored makes no sense, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. There you go. Monitoring the inputs to the application so you can detect things like fuzzing, right?
Yeah. Yep. That makes perfect sense, being able to, put in -1 of something or, what have you. Yeah. So, the last little bit here was about configuration management and vulnerability management, which is near and dear to my heart. Software security group is creating and interfacing with incident response. That's quite good, 86%. What kind of company doesn't interface with their own incident response? Or identify software defects found in operations monitoring and feeding them back to development. 88% said that. That means you've got 12% of companies. 12%, so what was a 90, 95 companies? So roughly 10 companies on this list do not identify software defects and operations monitoring and feeding them back. I wonder what they do in this case. Are they implementing some kind of DevOps where they're just fixing it in operations and not sending it back to development?
That's the thing. They don't. They may slap a mitigating control on there without it going back into the development life cycle, right?
Okay, yeah.
So things like that. Maybe, I mean, it depends on the situation, but yeah, you would think all software companies do this. Like, hey, if we found a defect, we need to fix it. And on the front end, go back, put in a fix, re-release, things like that. But apparently 12% don't do that. And I have to think that a lot bigger percentage of the total sum of all application companies don't do this.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. So, I mean, everything looks good on configuration management and vulnerability management until you get to level 3. Developing operations inventory of applications. So, that was a level 2 thing. But, I guess it's important to know what applications you have under your belt. That would probably also include like modules if you're using WordPress, Drupal, any CMS, knowing which 1295 module you've just bought online and are using and is not getting any kind of software review would be helpful to know about, because you can get vulnerabilities just from some poorly written module. So it really drops off at level 3 though. I mean, obviously not everybody's comfortable operating a bug bounty program.
It's interesting that is on here, right? Is it, I guess, is it a good thing to operate a bug bounty program? Maybe. Yeah. I mean, it depends. We could have a serious debate on whether or not that should be on here, a bug bounty program. Obviously, it works for some companies, and it may not work for all.
Well, I would think it would probably jumpstart an application security program. I mean, if you don't have anybody doing any testing on your system, a bug bounty program will do that. You can have a private bug bounty that would, you could. I talked to Mike Shama from Cobalt.io. I'm not like pimping out his company or anything. He was on our Source Seattle audio. He was talking about bug bounties and how they could help, your organization with, fixing your applications. If you don't have a proper security team, or, you don't have a group of people who can do software audits for you, that might be something they could do. I mean, not necessarily maybe source code review, but, they can hammer on your boxes and help you with your development process in that manner.
So a bug bounty program, 6%.
Yeah. So 95, 6%. So 6%. So roughly 7 companies there had a bug bounty program.
Yep.
Yeah. Simulating software crises, we're only 8%. So tabletop and IR kind of stuff. What happens if somebody was able to do SQL injection on our boxes? What would be the issue with that? And
these level 3s are really hard. They are not easy.
But that's the point, isn't it? That's the point.
It is.
It's like
it is. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. Where you may effort. It's a shell game.
Yeah.
Where do you put your people? Where do you put your time? Where do you put your money?
Yeah.
Right. So, and again, back to the spider diagram. Look to see if you're kind of close to the average, right?
Yeah, and I don't think every company is going to ever be level 3 in everything. I think it would be nice, but I don't think it's possible for you to, spend X amount of dollars and have everything level 3, because that's not good for a business. I mean, you could be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, making sure you're, imposing policy on vendors and making sure all your level 3s in all these 12 domains or whatever. But in the end, I mean, unless you're, there's other things involved, your network security is going to suffer if you're just concentrating on one section. So I think, if you can get 2.5, on some of those, you might have one that's just a level 1. It really depends on, you got to prioritize what's important at that point. And, do you want to go, balls out and have level 3 on everything? Or do you just want to, see where you stand? Because like you said, why should I spend the additional money and make all the effort if my competitors aren't doing that? You don't want to be the guy getting eaten by the bear. You want to be the guy just in front of the guy who gets eaten.
Or you may lag in a certain control that could get you owned or could get a bad reputation for your software, right?
Yeah.
So you want to be well-rounded, I guess, in that respect. Sometimes it's not good to be well-rounded, but in this case, probably is.
I would say level 1s are probably a good, as long as you're hitting all the level 1s, I think you're probably doing pretty good. All the level 1s that are applicable to your organization, because some of them aren't, some of them may not be realistic for your organization, depending on what you're making or what you're building. But yeah, some of these are like, identifying potential attackers. That was only 36%, and I'm thinking you probably need to know who your attackers are, because you can't defend against things if you don't know who or what ways they're coming at you. So
yeah, so if you build a banking application, well, it's probably people looking for it might be the Zeus Trojan, right, or something like that.
Yeah, and for application purposes, you want to make sure that your applications in the financial environment are protecting against impersonation or non-repudiation. Repudiation, not non-repudiation. You want to make sure that you can prove that the people who are logging in are getting to their tens of thousands of dollars. So your security programs and your security applications should be tailored towards that. So,
there's also mitigation for denial of service attacks, just all kinds of different things that may fall under your topic of whatever.
Yep.
What you're building, what kind of app is it?
Exactly. So, Mr. Boettcher, we shot for 30 minutes and we're like an hour 7. So, I think we need to kick off here. No, dude, we're like 1 hour 7 minutes. No, I swear. I did not mention this. I was
thinking if we can get 15 minutes, we'd be doing all right.
Well, I didn't want a long podcast because we did the Source Seattle stuff, which I actually really enjoyed. Source Seattle. I know I talk it up a lot, and it's like, oh, you're a shill because, they paid for your ticket. But I thought it was really great. I thought it was very B-Sides-esque, very intimate. A lot of good people there from various tech companies in the Seattle area, but there were a lot of folks from the San Francisco area and even from LA who came up just for this conference. It was quite interesting. I hope that we can have some of them on as well, because some of the stuff that they were talking about, Miss Masha talking about deputizing and creating human intrusion defense systems was a fantastic talk. Chip McSweeney from OpenDNS talking about domain generating algorithms that malware used to communicate. I didn't know that was the way they actually do communicate, by deriving what the next domain should be when they're talking to one another. Which I guess makes sense if you think about it in any amount of time. So, but yeah, they're going to do one in Dublin. Boston is coming up in a few, probably 3-4 months. So yeah, definitely go and check that out. I'm sure they'd love to, have you come on in. We probably had 100 people on the first day, and because the weather was just really crappy the second day, we had probably about, I would say 70 people who were floating in and out all day. So that was pretty cool. So, Mr. Boettcher, have you got anything coming up soon? Anything? You said something on Wednesday about you were going to be releasing 1.0 of LogMD soon?
Oh, yeah, it'll come soon.
Nice.
Yep. Working on version 1. Pro, I think we released a free version there right before Black Hat. And so our Pro version is going to have a lot of new features in it, and we'll probably release another free version shortly after that.
Very cool.
Yeah. So it's doing really well.
Very nice. So if people wanted to find out about LogMD, more about you and LogMD, how would they do that on the social media?
Yeah, I post some any kind of comment that I'll think will help people on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Boettcherpwned, BOETTCHERPWNED.
Okay, right on. So at the beginning of the podcast, I had mentioned the Slack channel sign up, which was completely incorrect as usual. Slack channel, you can go to https / of course, breaksec.signup.team. And then you put in your username, or you put in your name, email address, and the email address will send you a confirmation, which will then come back to me, and I can pimp it, I can approve you. So breaksec.signup.team, and that bot will get you added to the channel. We have 4 people in there right now, so come on in. Ideally I'd like it to be something where we can put up a topic that we're going to talk about that week. We don't always record on the same day, so it's not like we're at any set time, but if you're in there talking about it, we can get input from people there. We can ask, questions can be asked and answered on the show as it's happening, and you'll hear it, a couple days later. Or if we have an interview, we can invite the person in, and you can do like an AMA on Reddit where we can talk about those things as happening. So that might be something we can do in the future. So let's see. So you can follow me, Brian, on Twitter. I'm at Brian Brake, BryanBrake. The official BrakeSec podcast is at BrakeSec, BRAKE-SEC. We're on Facebook. We have a Tumblr. We're on Player FM, Stitcher. We have a TuneIn Radio app. We're on iTunes. I always put the links to our YouTube channel and SoundCloud on there in our show notes. Our website, 3Ws. I heard that the other day. It's called 3Ws.breakingsecurity.com. And you can get on there and get our show notes. That was it for the week. Mr. Boettcher, any last words?
Well, there's really no place you can't get our fine podcast.
No joke, man. That was well said, sir.
Anywhere great podcasts are aggregated and distributed, right?
That's right. We are cross-platform. If you're on Apple, iTunes, Apple, we're on iTunes. We're in the Google Play Store as well. I forgot to mention that we're in the Google Play Store. Any RSS reader will get it. I use Dogcatcher on Android, but you can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. So we're pretty much anywhere, and we pimp it out on Twitter a lot. So we appreciate the feedback on iTunes, of course, and all of our Patreon fans. We have a Patreon too. If you want to, hook us up on there, that helps offset some of the costs from Libsyn. It's not a lot, but our Patreon people, we love them because they give us money. So yeah. Well, no, dude, I can't. I miss Sonny and all them over there, man. I'm telling you, they love what we do, I guess, enough to give us money. So I ain't turning it down, but in a few months we'll be turning that over to Hack Charity or somebody like that anyway. So I don't really make a lot of money off the podcast or at all. So. All right, well, that was it for Breaking Down Security this week. Mr. Boettcher, as always, it is a pleasure to see your beautiful face. And
listen to my voice.
Yes, and listen to our dulcet voices. Yeah. That was it. Everybody have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye.